Saints' Day was originally set aside to commemorate all the martyrs of the faith. Martyr means witness. From the early persecutions, whose names were never recorded, and thus whose memory was at risk of being lost. And the term martyr means witness, and oftentimes you think of a martyr as someone who died in the faith. This is a classic example there of getting burned at the stake, or the lions coming to maul them and chew on them. What about those who died in the faith, who never died for their faith, but who were faithful through their whole life? Well, the church said, there's a lot of famous martyrs that we know about, but what about the ones that nobody knows about? And so this was part of the reason it was extended to remember all who have died, all who lived and died in the faith, and now rest from their labors. And so the hymn that we just first sang, for all the saints who from their labors rest. Okay, so that's why we sing that song too. We continue this tradition today at Bethel. There's a list of those who have died this past year. Bethel members, also friends and family of Bethel members too. And I mentioned earlier we have an opportunity to do that. This is an example of not throwing the baby out with the bathwater in Lutheran churches. Martin Luther sought to retain or conserve the treasures of the church that were not contrary to the gospel, and that could encourage us in faith, hope, and love. There's some when the church separated itself from the Roman Catholic Church, there were some that said, we're not going to do anything at all that we used to do this. We're not going to have any prayers of the saints or anything like that. He says, well, wait a minute, let's not get carried away here. And so they wanted to continue to honor and to emulate those who lived their lives of faith. And it's based on this reading. Here's another example of the different saints. Now, they all have halos painted on their heads, but there's all sorts of people on there. Not just old men with beards, but young women with babies, young women, men, children, all the saints of God. So this is an example of that. And this comes from this verse. There we go. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin that clings so closely. And let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, who for the sake of the joy that was set before him endured the cross, disregarding its shame, and has taken his seat at the right hand of the throne of God. And I kind of put this in out of order, but here we go. In the Apology to the Augsburg Confession, Philip Melanchthon, he is a reformer, he wrote it, and he said this. Why do we observe All Saints' Day? Our confession approves giving honor to the saints. The honor is threefold. The first is thanksgiving. We want to give thanks to God because he's given examples of his mercy, and he's shown us how he wants to save humanity. He's given teachers and other gifts to the church, and we're thankful for these people who have died in the faith. The second is strengthening of our faith. And they give an example. When we see Peter forgiven after his denial, and how many times did Peter deny Jesus? 3. Okay, 3 times. Okay, so when we see that, we too are encouraged to believe that grace truly superabounds much more over sin. And so it reminds us that even Peter, who's a saint, okay, he denied and he was forgiven. We can be forgiven too. The third thing is imitation. First of their faith, then their virtues, which people should imitate according to their callings. And so this is, again, an example of why we still remember All Saints Sunday. We give thanks to God, we have our faith strengthened, and we seek to imitate. And the cloud of witnesses, I put that up there, Wi-Fi, powered by the cloud. We are powered by the cloud, not the computer cloud, but the cloud of witnesses. And so, how big is your cloud of witnesses? Think about that. Think about the people who have helped shape your life, who have given you an example to follow, who confronted you when you needed to be confronted, who encouraged you. I think of my mom and dad. They're both dead now. But my mom would always say, you need to apply yourself. Now, any of you heard that before from parents? As a kid, when you hear that, you're like, oh, I hate when you say that. Apply yourself. What does that mean? Well, I know what it means. Parents know what it means. And it was easy to try to give up. It's like, I don't want to do it. No, you need to apply yourself. Don't give up. Keep doing it. And I think of my dad too, who dedicated his life serving the gospel. He's a pastor, and he worked at the national level. He went to wherever the call took him. From Montana to Minnesota to California, back to Minnesota. And that example allowed me to kind of do the same, not be afraid to go wherever. And it's been a blessing to me. And so I think of that. I think of my Grandpa Tiny, who would make us laugh so hard that milk would come out of our nose after we drink a glass of milk. Anybody, you don't have to raise your hand, but you know that. It's like, I don't know how he did it. He would just do that. And he was 6'6", 300 pounds. He got the nickname Tiny. So if you've ever been to Northfield, Minnesota, there used to be a place called Tiny's. And that was him. He had like a tobacco store, pool hall. Anyway, and that's one of my grandpas. Another grandpa, Papa, he was Ingvald. He never owned a car. He came from Norway. He had 8 kids. Half of them were born in Norway. The other half were born in Northfield. My dad was one of them. And he walked to work every day. Granted, it wasn't that far to walk, about 3 or 4 blocks, but he walked every day and never owned a car. And I'm thinking, okay, how many vehicles do I have now? How many? Never mind. But he taught me how to live simply, and just lived in this unassuming home right there in town. And anyway, I think of Bud, the track coach in high school. He would start talking to us as a team and start lecturing us. And it would go on for about 45 minutes. And no one dared to say, can we leave? We'd just listen. And I talked to a friend of mine, and he went to Apple Valley like 15 years later. And he said, I go, did Bud still lecture people? He said, oh yeah. In fact, at the awards banquet, he started lecturing the parents and students. And finally a teacher came in and cut him off. But he was good at just letting us know what was what. And he was like a preacher almost. But he confronted me and told me, you shouldn't act that way. I was lifting weights and trying to act like I'm so tough and strong and flexing around. He goes, that ain't you. Stop it. He was right, and I did. And I'm grateful for him. Yes, we need someone that'll do that to us. Someone who will confront us and tell us the truth. And he did that. And I think of Luther Lersack. Miriam remembers him. He was a coach in college, a Bible teacher. He worked at the Mount Carmel camp. He encouraged me to go to the Bible camp and work there. And he says, he knew that I played football there at the college, and he wasn't my coach, but he saw me play anyway. And he says, we need more pastors that know how to play football. And I thought about that. I said, okay. So anyway, but he was right. And the list could go on, but I have another one too. And my wife and I share this one because my wife was part of it, and it's not embarrassing. But we went horseback riding in our first parish in the Badlands of real close to the north unit of the National Park, Theodore Roosevelt National Park. And all these big ravines, and neither one of us knew how to ride a horse. And Freddie goes, just, okay, you can ride Tick, and I rode Talk, these horses. And all of a sudden we went over this big ravine, it was straight down. And we both went, oh, and he said, don't worry. Just put your left leg on the left stirrup, your right leg in the right stirrup. Keep your mind in the middle. The horse knows the way. And we went all the way down to the river, Missouri River, or Little Missouri, and then back up. But I remember that, how he said that. Put your left foot in the left stirrup, right foot in the right stirrup. Keep your mind in the middle. And that has helped me over the years when I've had to confront things, gone through difficult issues, difficult things, and just going through just whatever the issue was. You know, Freddie, you're right. And we all have people like this. I remember, I think of Sarah now, Dorothy, our first organist, she gave our daughter Sarah a stuffed lamb called Lammy. And Dora, your daughter, still has Lammy, right? It's still there. So it's a little dirtier, a little worn out than when Sarah got it, but that's the way stuffed animals are supposed to be. But I think of that. How big is our club? How big are the witnesses that we have? We could all have 10 to 15, 20 people like that we can think of. That's what the Bible's talking about. We are surrounded by a cloud of witnesses. And the image there, the writer, it uses the image of a meet, like an amphitheater, a race. And they're cheering us. And they've handed us the baton. We're going to continue on, and they're there. They're behind us. We can hear them speaking. And you know all this to be true. So I want you to think about that today. How big is your cloud of witnesses? And we have Luke today that touches on this a little bit. Matthew talks about this, and it's called the Sermon on the... Luke calls it the Sermon on the Plain. Remember what Matthew calls it? Sermon on the Mount. It's kind of interesting. They both say the same thing, but Luke, the mountain is where you go for revelation. The mountain is where God speaks to people. You're inspired. You get on top of the mountain. You can see down the valley, and it's like, wow, this is great. The person who wrote America the Beautiful went to Pikes Peak. She was on the way to go to college in Colorado Springs for summer school. And they went up to Pikes Peak on mules back in the day. This back in the early 1900s or whatever. And it took all day to do it. And they were just about didn't want to do it anymore because it took all day. And then she stood up top and she looked around the purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. And if you've ever been to Pikes Peak or the mountains there, you can see you look east and it's all farmland and then the mountains. Anyway, so there's beauty and there's inspiration. But where do most people live? In the valleys. That's where the real folks is. And so Jesus gives a sermon on the level place, on the plain, for those. One commentary said, for those who live in the real world. Okay, and it's for everyone that can come. It's for all those that are there. People come from the north, from the south, from the east, and the west. It's for everyone. And what does Jesus say? Do unto others. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The Sermon on the Plain. Blessed are you. Woe to you. But it comes right down. We are part of the saints of God. It's not because we are better than someone else. It's because we have been washed in the blood of the Lamb. We wear robes of white. That's why pastors wear these white things. It's called an alb, to remind us of the forgiveness. That's why we light the Christ candle today, to remind us that the light shines in the darkness, that those who have died are still with us. We believe in the communion of saints, and that's what this is all about. And so we are We have been called, people who have been called by Jesus, to live Spirit-led lives, not just in heaven, but here and now. Jesus still speaks to his saints, you and me. And no matter what happens, we have that promise. This is from the reading today from Daniel, and he saw this troubling vision, didn't like it, and he was wondering, what does this mean? So I asked one of the attendants to the truth concerning all this, and he said that he was disclosed this to me, the interpretation of the matter. As for these four great beasts, these monsters that are rising up, four kings shall arise out of the earth. They're going to rule you. It's not going to go well. And, well, that doesn't sound good. Is there anything else to this? In other words, Daniel is seeing this tribulation time. Something's going to happen. That isn't going to be good at all. And these great kings are going to rule everything. And they're going to be in charge. And you're going to be persecuted. And you can almost sense Daniel saying, okay, please, let there be a but after this. And there was. But, this is what matters. But the holy ones of the Most High shall receive the kingdom. Not the kingdoms of this world, not the kingdoms of the earth, but the kingdom of God, and possess it. Possess the kingdom forever and ever. That's what we have. That's what we get. And we're going to sing at the end of our service today, when the saints go marching in. We will be in that number when the saints go marching in. Thanks be to God. Amen. Okay, please stand.